Hello, everyone. Today we are going to be talking about one of the best ways to build a high performing team, and that is to build trust. I'm going to start with a quote. Daniel Call, in his book, The Culture Code, says this: Google didn't win because it was smarter, it won because it was safer. Daniel's talking about what happened in early 2000s when Google was creating a software engine for targeting online ads. Most people thought the company Overture was going to win this race for developing this algorithm or software engine because they were the leader in internet advertising at that time. But as we all know now, Google did win that race. And according to Daniel Coyle's research, it's because Google was safer. Let's dive into that a little bit more. What does safe mean? Amy Edmondson, a Harvard Business School professor, defines team psychological safety as this. She says that team psychological safety is a shared belief held by members of a team that it's okay to take risks, to express their ideas and concerns, to speak up with questions, and to admit mistakes. All this without the fear of any negative consequences. So, in other words, team psychological safety is having that trust. So, today we'll talk about why trust is important and how to build that trust. To support why trust is so important in the corporate environment, especially in this corporate chaos or the busy times that our corporate world is in, here are some stats. When there's more trust in an organization, employees experience, on average, 75% less stress. 75%. That's a big, big number right there. In addition to that, they also are 50% more productive when there is trust in the organization. This is according to the Harvard Business Review. This is not surprising because when there is trust in the organization and between team members, energy is spent making progress, doing real work versus managing conflicts, managing the political hierarchy, and things like that. So people inadvertently can be more productive. So that's why these stats really make sense. So now that we've established that trust is really important for high performing teams, let's peel the layers of the onion a little bit here. Because trust is such a ambiguous word in some ways. The way I look at trust in organizations, there are different layers to it. At the core of it is self trust. So, the trust we have about our own selves at an individual level. And everything starts with that. So, think of it as the core of an onion. The next layer, the next outer layer, is the trust with your immediate manager. This is trusting that our managers want what's best for us and will have our backs as needed. That's the second layer. So, trust with the manager. The third layer is trust within your team. Trusting the team and knowing that the team will stick up for you. That's the third level. The outermost level of trust, or layer, not level, layer of trust, is the trust in the organization. So, do employees believe in the organization's vision, mission, culture, values, and policies? Do they align with the company policies and trust them? So, that's a bit of a framework for looking at organizational trust. So, there are four layers. Just to recap: self trust, trust with your manager, trust within the team, and then trusting the organization. So, how do we build this trust? One way to build trust, according to Daniel Coyle's research, is to give out belonging cues in all of our interactions. So, this can be with another team member, this can be even with an external or internal stakeholder, and this definitely is between the manager and the employee as well. So, what does a belonging cue mean? Belonging cues have three main characteristics. First one is being fully present with the person in front of you, whether in person or on Zoom or any other communication channel that we use now. So, not being distracted, not checking your phone, but giving them your full attention is one of the components of giving out belonging cue. The second component for a belonging cue is to customize the interaction based on what you're hearing the other person say. So, really individualizing the interaction and not making it generic. The third component of a belonging cue is for the interaction to have a future orientation. What that means is during the interaction are signs given out to the recipient that this relationship is going to continue into the future. For example, in a performance conversation, the manager could say something like, "We are interested in your growth and we want to see you grow in the company," or something like that. That ensures the future orientation of the interaction and the long term potential and makes the recipient feel like they belong. So, in every one on one interaction, it's important for us to infuse as many belonging cues as we can. So, again, the three components are being fully present with the person, fully customizing what you say and how you interact, and then adding some future orientation based verbiage to what you are saying. That's method one of how to build trust. The second way to build trust is to display vulnerability. This can be with any team member, stakeholders, depending on what's important or what's at stake in that relationship, and also between the manager and employees. How can we display vulnerability? It can be as simple as saying things like, in meetings, things like, "What assumptions am I making here?" And inviting the team or anyone you're interacting with to contribute to that. It makes them feel safe to disagree. Other things you can say to display vulnerability are things like, "Who can find what may be wrong with this idea? What am I missing here? I could be wrong. What do you think?" Or even say, when you've made a mistake, saying that, "I made a mistake there. I wasn't thinking about X." When one party of an interaction shows vulnerability, the other party is invited to do the same, and there is a lot of trust built there. So, displaying vulnerability is the second way. The third way to build trust in a team and therefore build a high performing team is to really align on individual values and organizational values. So, values are what's most important to us as individuals to express in our lives to feel fulfilled. So, these can be things like freedom, communication or connection, integrity, balance or health, and so on. So, when I coach and consult with teams, I do this exercise where we mine for values of everyone on the team. It's like a pairs exercise. By the end of the exercise, each participant has a list of their values that the partner in the exercise helps them mine. After that, we look at the organization's values, what's really important for the organization, and the values and ethos that are collectively important for the organization. A leader generally will talk the team through that, giving examples and things like that. And then finally, we look at the alignment between individual values for each individual in the team and then the organization's values. Because when there is values alignment, it's easier to trust the organization, it's easier to trust other people, and the culture of the organization will turn into a more trusting one. So, knowing values of your team members and being able to talk to them, and also creating alignment between individual values and organization values is another way to build trust in an organization. The fourth way to build trust and a high performing team is to create a fearless culture. A fearless culture, what is that? What I mean is a culture based on equality versus a culture of hierarchy. I'll give you an example here, going back to the case study on Google, or the quote on Google that I started off with. Google, it was a startup at that time, when they competed for this search engine. Some of these ways that the company uses to create this fearless culture or a culture of equality. And some of the ways they use are company wide hockey games, where even like the founders are treated as other players at that time. They also run meetings that are called, I don't remember the name of the meeting, but there are meetings where employees can bring up anything without worrying about hierarchy. That's the agenda or the purpose of the meeting, and it's made very explicit. Therefore, the culture is more fearless compared to other places. The last way to build trust in a team is to really nurture personal connection. And this needs to be done carefully and at a deeper level where people get to know each other as people and individuals. Yes, the work is important, but the people are even more important. And there's also the question of how to do it in a professional way, keeping in line with some of the ethos of the organization. There's a good example from the NBA world on this. So, coach of San Antonio Spurs, who's Greg Popovich, uses some really interesting techniques to build personal connections in his basketball team. This team has won 117 games, more than they should have, based on players' abilities alone. So the team is definitely doing something right here and can be considered a high performing team. So, something very interesting Greg does is he gets the team to watch documentaries regularly. But these documentaries are not on basketball or sports, or things that are related to what the team does. These are documentaries on things like voting rights, gay marriage, war in Syria, controversial topics like that. And he facilitates thoughtful conversation after they watch the documentary. This really allows the team to get to know each other and where each person is coming from at a very deep level. And this can really build trust and allow the team to perform at a very high level. So there's one last way to build trust in teams, and that is to create a culture of feedback and reviews by giving continuous feedback and taking action based on that feedback as well. So, giving feedback is not the easiest thing to do. It can be vulnerable to give as well as to receive. But creating a culture of feedback and making it safe for people to give and receive feedback can really take that team trust to the next level And in addition, this feedback is going to really help the performance of individuals as well as the collective as well. A good example here is Pixar has a meeting called the dailies. So this is a daily meeting where everyone in the team comments on the footage that was created on the previous day. So based on that feedback, the movie is changed as needed. So not only is everyone invited to give feedback, but action is taken based on that feedback as well. There's an art and science to giving feedback, and that's something leaders and managers and all employees can be trained on. So there were the 6 ways that we discussed to build trust. I'm going to go a little bit into the remote world now and quickly touch on a few ways to build trust when we are largely working remote. The first thing when we are working remote is to remember that in person interactions are key to build trust. It doesn't have to be every day, but especially at the beginning of a work relationship, it's important to establish some level of in person familiarity. I mean, the best option is to get the team into one location, failing which online collaboration tools that include video can be used for this as well. But it's hard to put away or ignore the importance of in-person interaction. So even if people work remote, it's important to have at least quarterly, biannually, create those opportunities for people to be in the same room with each other, especially if they're working towards one common goal and is part of one team. The second thing to keep in mind for remote teams is to have one-on-one Zoom coffee chats as much as possible. Yes, in real life is important, but we know that that's going to be limited in a remote environment. So the other closest alternative is to have these regular touch points where the discussion is not just about the work, but does touch on personal lives of the people talking. And not just that, getting to know their values, what's important to them, all of that. So one-on-one interactions online are even more important in today's world. The third thing to think about when working remote is that the fun events we organize, there needs to be some depth. They can be fun, but they also need to allow the opportunity to get to know each team member at a deeper level, to get to know people as people, basically. So there's a lot of thinking to do on what these fun events can be and have them be accessible to everyone on the team. The fourth thing to keep in mind is we spoke about creating a culture of feedback to build trust. When we are working remote, it's important as much as possible try to give feedback in person, or if it has to be done online, it's done one-on-one. However, positive feedback or recognition is encouraged to be given publicly or in bigger forums. So being sensitive to the fact that constructive feedback, although constructive, can be difficult for a lot of people to hear. Doing so in a sensitive, confidential, one-on-one setting is the best when we're working remote. The last thing to keep in mind when working remote to maintain team trust is to have a lot of systems and processes that are really clear to empower the people. Because in the remote world, we hear a lot of stories about more micromanagement because we don't know when people are signing in, signing off. But micromanagement doesn't build trust. We all know that. So, to avoid that, we need to have proper systems and processes. So, the manager does not need to monitor when the employee logs in or logs off, but has a clear online accountability process to hold the employee accountable. In a similar way, if people are working in very different time zones, does the employee have everything they need or can find everything they need and know where to go to if they have a question without having to wait for somebody else in another time zone to come online? So this part is really important as the world goes more and more remote. So we've spoken about how to build trust and looked at some considerations in the remote world as well. What are the final takeaways on building trust and thereby high performing teams amid corporate chaos? The first thing is that trust is what really differentiates exceptional performers from other teams. This can really make or break a corporate team, corporate or other team. Team trust also promotes individual well being, happiness, and productivity. We can all contribute to building trust in a team, no matter where we are in the organization, no matter which role we play in the organization. The other really important thing is trust building is an ongoing, continuous process. There's no, okay, I built trust at the beginning of my role. Now I can just take a step back because trust can erode over time based on what's happening in our lives, what's happening in our work, and even what's happening externally in the market or in the industry can impact the trust that's built. So it is definitely an ongoing process. And then there are some things to be really careful and cognizant about in the remote world to build and maintain that trust. That's all I have for you today about building trust and thereby building high performing teams. I hope this was useful to you. Thank you so much for listening. Take care.